Welcome back to Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom. I'm Brendan Davis, your host, and I've got to be honest with you. I've been saying basically that message ever since May 2017. I normally do it in a pre-recorded introduction. Pre-recorded before you hear it, recorded after I have my guests. Typically I have a guest on, I do the interview, I do an edit, I make notes of what we talked about, and I set things up so we all sound like geniuses, in theory, the guest, hopefully at least. But today, we're doing what I do once in a while, is I'm introing with a guest sitting right here. Hi, Carl King.
Hello.
Thank you for giving it your little animation, your radio voice. Carl King is someone you've heard of if you've paid any attention to me talking about this show, because Carl's work is the very first thing you hear. That music, who composed that, Carl?
I guess I composed it.
You did. You composed it. You programmed, performed, produced, mixed, engineered with drums by
Mike Stone.
Mike Stone. Hi,
yeah,
Mike
I wrote
Stone.
a little hello, Mike Stone. He asked if I would be mentioning him, and yes, now we're mentioning him.
Absolutely, and we'll be linking him and you and all your socials and your professionals and all the things in the linking place. So, Carl, for the listeners, I'm going to kind of forget you're here. No offense, because Carl's actually. Well, let's not get hasty. Carl, I'm happy to say, is one of my oldest and I think best friends at this point in my life. I mean, this means people are dying and I'm getting old, but it's more of that sounded a little morbid. There's no, he's smiling, but I got no audible, and I realizing the audience goes, wow, what did he say? So here's the thing. This is a very special episode of Big Fish for lots of reasons we're going to talk about in some detail in a minute. But first, I want to say I have a traditional first question for Carl King, which is, please tell us the short version of who you are, where you're from, and for you, why China, and then we'll unpack it.
I was very amused when you sent the prep list of questions that the first one was why China, and I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Never been there.
Yeah. So
you probably had some vegan pot stickers, but you don't have any other Chinese.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old days of doing pranks at conventions, of showing up and trying to market cheese cubes at a music show, or just pranking, doing the Eric Andre thing at random places, and it's just totally out of place. Like, why am I on a show about China? So it was very funny.
Awesome.
But who am I and why am I here?
Yeah. Big questions.
I did a lot of music for a lot of years under the name Sir Millard Mulch, and then Dr. Zoltan, and that was around the time I moved out to LA and met Brendan, who I have to say, you took me under your wing, and you're one of the first people I met out here, and you were like that kind soul that was like, let's take this lost person and show them around. And I was just completely overwhelmed and scared and didn't know what I was doing, and you'd pick me up, take me to your place, and it was extremely generous, and you'd hang out and listen to me, do these little therapy sessions at night. And I thank you for putting up with those long hours of me dumping information on you. So I came out here with the intention of getting into music and pursuing that. I moved here from Florida. It was about 12 years ago. And I also wanted to get involved with film a bit, and now I'm finally slowly chipping away at that and getting some projects going in filmmaking. And I've been working in more educational video content for a long time, but now I'm trying to get into animation and just narrative storytelling and comedic animation.
Well, I am amazed you were able to summarize what I know of as this huge actual body of work so succinctly. That speaks well that you've been able to.
I'll say I've tried a lot of different things and a lot of avenues. I've written books, I've made videos, I try this, I try that, I try that. Maybe it's because none of them ever work out and really break through for me, or maybe because I just enjoy doing a lot of different things.
Well, it's funny. So as we go through this, talking to Carl, who's sitting here in front of me, and also you, dear listener, this is really meaningful for me for a lot of reasons. I appreciate everything you just said, and our offline conversation on this general topic was really kind of heartwarming for me too. The reality is that it was the time that we became friends was such an interesting time, and I won't try to do a huge memory lane thing on my end and unpack it all because I want to talk about you. And then we both have I think we have news to share, and I've got a big thing to say about the show. But the bottom line is, you met when my own filmmaking career in LA was just starting to kind of catch, it was starting to pick up, and I'd, had a few things happening and had a few good kind of chips added to my stack, whatever metaphor we should use. But
you were able to give me my first work in LA.
That's right.
Help me pay the rent. I started doing web design for you,
right, you did
and graphic design and posters.
That's right. You did the early stuff for Life with Fiona.
Yeah, that kept me afloat. And after a few months, I started worrying, am I going to have to go back to Florida? And I started like crashing, and I was broke. And you would always find some sort of gig for me of like, well, you can do my business cards or whatever.
Man.
So it was always helping me get through that extra month or whatever.
You have an ability to live lean if I was keeping you afloat, but I appreciate that. I was mostly floating or gasping myself most of those years, but you love to work with friends if it's a great relationship, and it really was. And so I met you through our common friend Chris Sanders, who I saw last night for a drink for a business meeting, and we saw him 2 nights ago for a dinner at Fight Club, which you may or may not talk about. I met you through Chris, who really gave me a great kind of the best intro somebody could have given you. This is way pre Dr. Zoltan. This was Sir Millard Mulch, but he did his best, and to give me a solid nutshell on you. And I remember we met up over going to a Halloween party at Chris Bond's old house.
That was amazing.
Not to name drop too much, but our old friend, haven't talked to him in forever, but very successful guy in visual effects in Hollywood, and we just had a really interesting time, and he took a liking to you, I remember, and it was really interesting. And as much as you would go on about this if I didn't say it, so I know I'm not telling tales, but especially at the time, like you said, you were kind of lost and confused in Hollywood. I know you've been out here before. This wasn't your first time.
I really knew barely anything. I mean, I had passed through once for like a day.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you had like some kind of visual memory.
I ended up here with renting a bedroom for a month. I had enough cash to rent a bedroom for a month, and someone gave me a bicycle. I think Christopher's old friend gave me a bicycle.
His friend had a bike
and dropped me off in Culver City, and there I was. Like,
and you were
what do I do? No car. No.
And we won't really tell tales too much because you were in what is basically sort of like a real party house, as I remember, and you're not a party guy.
That's absolutely right.
So
that was a mega party house.
It was like rock the house.
Hundreds of
people. It was the kind of house. Y'all know those house parties that sometimes they show in like rap videos or whatever. Well, imagine like a much pastier collection of people wearing a lot of black and maybe listening to The Cure, and it was
a lot of moaning coming from the other rooms.
Oh, okay, yeah. Family show, Carl. No, so you can say whatever. That's right. I'll take your word on that. I think I heard tales. So right now, anybody who's still listening, hopefully you're all listening, because we're gonna get to some big stuff here. So, I want this is going to be an interesting format for us, and we are doing it under sort of heightened circumstances. I mean, this could easily be one of the episodes that if we had the time, it'd be 3 hours. Or, I mean, the longest I've had has been close to 2.
Wow.
I had several that are 1.5 hours. I have a hard out. I'm in town for the sake of the record or whatever. I'm in town because I'm producing a short project, and it leads to something bigger. And I'm booked full of meetings, but I was determined to do this, determined to have you on as my last guest for the reason that we talked about. And I just tipped it. I guess I'm starting with me, last guest. So I've hinted at this previously. I know I've said there's going to be a new show coming up, and I was unsure what to do with Big Fish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to morph Big Fish into this new show. I have a new title. And the concept is an extension of Big Fish. So this will be the last Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom that we do. I'll have a few of the guests from the old show will still pop up as a special guest on the new show. That'll work in my format. But Carl, let's talk about you. So I'll say a little tiny bit about that as we wrap up. I want to talk about let's talk a little bit about your crazy ass journey from Venice, Florida. First of all, what is Venice? Give us pretend you never have to go back there. What is Venice?
Man, it's funny. I've been taking a screenwriting class with Pilar Alessandra lately,
Yes.
and you might know who she is.
I know who she is, acclaimed instructor and
She
writer.
is awesome.
I don't know her personally. I just know her reputation and her
Right.
work a little bit. Yeah.
As an exercise, I started writing this just for the class. I started writing a show about a goth girl that grows up in Venice, Florida, just to set the opposing forces at work.
Okay.
Venice, Florida is a tiny little man-made island. They call it an island, but it's not an island. But everything is all about we're on the island, but it's really not an island. It's like
It's like a marketing gimmick.
yeah. There's like a trench around it where boats can go through.
There's like a little bit of a moat.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, it's a beautiful place. It's really peaceful, really nice. But it's all tiki bars, beaches, Jimmy Buffett, MIDI music. At
So
least it was at the time.
I can imagine that you
Shells,
thought you'd
little
never leave.
coconut pirates.
Couldn't wait to leave is what I meant to say.
Yeah,
No offense to the fine people of Venice, but not your.
I go back there now and I love it. And I would
Okay.
love to be there.
Interesting.
If I had two different lives, I would love to just stay there and be there right now,
Interesting.
jogging down Venice Avenue. But yeah, it was the opposite of what I wanted to do with my life.
who
A
were-
retirement town. It's
Right.
all
That's the
old
impression
people.
I
All
had.
old people, like 65, 70 years old.
Well, no, I'm going to say something to help get us to where I want to go with
Yep.
this. That, not meaning to interrupt you,
Do it.
but in the interest of time, because I really want to get to the core of this, you would never say this about yourself, I think, because you're far too modest of a guy. You are what many people would consider quite an acclaimed musician and composer, very inventive. You've had an influence on some people, and you've been influenced by some of the best. You've been respected in progressive rock circles among certain people. You know, I'll say this in a way that I think hopefully you will at least acknowledge that maybe this
No,
is
that's true. It
is
did
true.
happen.
It's important for you to. Okay, good. I say this. I don't mean to like. I'm trying to be your therapist over here.
No.
We don't see each other often enough for me to. But the reality is that you know you have a great reputation, and you have done some really awesome stuff. Some of my favorite things, and that's when I got to know you. Part of what Chris played me was he played me part of your magnum opus at the time, the Sir Millard Mulch record. How to sell
the whole effing universe to everybody once and for all, or everybody. I think it was everybody.
I think that was it.
was
And
a long title.
It was a 2-album. I was a two record set at the time. You later did a third record.
It ended up being 4.
It ended up being 4. Now, was the one of them totally blank though? Was that like a John Cage?
The first
kind of
time
thing?
around, it was 2 and then a blank. And
Okay.
then I released the other 2. So it's a total of 4.
Okay, and because the one of them was like was it like outtakes or remixes or reconceptualized, or am I imagining that?
It was just a lot of
There's
material.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And actually, I believe the longest track on the collection stars Lael Larson, features Lael Larson and me. I think that's the longest track.
It might be. Yeah. I know which one you're thinking of, which is
there-
really funny. And it was the only one that was recorded out here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And I know right now I don't want to get too off the main plot, but
But yeah, you played a character that was very funny. And it's a long piano improvisation with you.
I'm doing like a spoken word thing. I'll give you guys a hint. I might have inhaled. At Carl's request, I will add who you know, teetotal does. I mean, I think you may still like a little fine wine, but you don't partake of anything else,
Right.
even though it is legal in California now. But yeah, I remember you, because sometimes if I would, you know, have a smoke, you would be very entertained by my rambling, and we decided, and you had this concept of how to put that to use. So if you want to hear me ramble for half an hour under the influence, I'll provide a link to that.
Yeah,
I don't know if I should do that.
It was perfect, in a way, closing to the project because so much of there was a lot of hinting at LA in that
Yeah.
album, and then to come out to LA and have a person from LA pretending to be a person from LA
Right.
was really fitting.
I played like a douchey wannabe manager, producer guy. And it was weird because I am a producer, although I was still just getting started. And for 5 minutes, I thought about opening a management company later. And
I remember that.
It felt a little weird, but I was doing a character based on real experiences Carl had. Somebody trying to con him into sending him money to do a thing. Anyway, that album has some unbelievable music. That thing is a funny part with this wicked piano in the background that's more of a gag, but no disrespect to Lael. So you made this record, you got quite a bit of attention, tons of press, lots of respect from lots of people who actually were and are your heroes.
Yeah.
What's sort of, for the sake of people, what's sort of the world, who are the touchstones for the music, at least for that era of you, and continue to today? Who are your musical touchstones for people that maybe your names people might have heard of?
Well, I don't know what that means exactly, but I think you're asking
of the
who
Zappa
was
universe people, like the kind of music that you're compared to and things like that.
Well, I'll say that right at the same time when I was making this album, in the same era, the same month or whatever, I was in the middle of hanging out with Trace Bruance of Mr. Bungle, Faith No More, made friends with him offering for my album to be on his label. And at the same time, Steve Vai was seriously looking at my album, listening to it, and thinking of starting a division of his record label and putting it on it. Yeah. And so I was, and at the same time, right after that, Devin Townsend asked me to open for him on a U.S. tour. So it was all these things at once colliding while I made this crazy album.
In your mom's house in Venice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also went out to San Francisco for a bit and recorded it out there, which didn't go well. But I was a nobody in a small little retirement town and getting all these life-changing opportunities in my mind.
And you sort of had written...
With my heroes.
You had written to Ruta Sepetys?
Ruta Sepetys,
who is Steve Vai's manager.
Yep.
And established a connection and amazing, because I know, even jumping way ahead in your film and video work now, part of what you do, you're very involved, and your friends now, I think you would probably say, the point is you work with like Dweezil, Zappa, and now you probably worked with Steve Vai so much that, is it still weird for you when you see Vai, because you've spent a bit of time with him, I think, in a mentory
I'll say
way.
he, as Devin Townsend says, Steve is extremely generous. He's extremely responsible and conscientious as a personality trait.
Right.
Really helpful. And when he cares about someone and wants to help them, he really does take people and like, hey, I'm going to try to help you do a thing, and always respond to you. And he did that with me. And of course, he is weird. I will say that. It is a different world.
Yeah, I love his music.
That's the way that's not saying anything bad. It's just that Steve Vai lives in a different world than I do. You go to his house and it's like, whoa, where am I at? I
can only imagine. I wouldn't have any business to necessarily cross paths with him, but I would, as a fan of his music, I would enjoy that from the tourist aspect. But
and speaking of the tourist thing, I'll say it reminded me of the same vibe as going to Kevin Smith's house when I filmed the interview with him for The Death of Superman Lives. I remember thinking, wow, some people out here live in a different world than I do, for sure.
Right.
Like, even though we live in the same... We might walk down the street and run into each other.
He's kind of up the hill from here, I think, basically.
And this is a person who has a different experience on Earth than I do.
I went out to tangent about Kevin Smith too much, because I've met him a couple times. I've stood in the same room and breathed air with him. Been on his sets a couple days because of common connections with my friend, sound man friend Whit Norris. And for my old film sound career, my old mentor and buddy has basically done almost all of Kevin's projects now of the last, 20 years, starting with Dogma. So I've crossed paths, but I've heard a lot about that house, and I've seen, of course, and then I've also consumed some of Kevin's he's so prolific, it's like a fire hose.
Yeah.
But, I've consumed some of his stuff, some of his podcasty sort of work, and you get that. I know what you're saying.
Can I drop something in here? Because something you're saying there is reminding me of something I wanted to talk about.
I want you to talk more than me.
Okay. Well, that's not going to happen, but
it's too late.
I just don't talk.
I just need to shut up now.
No. Something you said in your last podcast episode, and this is a candid thing, but you said that doing a podcast has been a therapeutic process for you.
Absolutely. And we'll be as candid as we want.
And you said that it would help you be less of an asshole. and I don't
Okay.
I don't bring this up because I think you're an asshole. I think you're the opposite of an asshole, and you've never seemed like an asshole to me. You've been only a good person. But that triggered a thought in me, and it's so funny because that's exactly, I feel like not being an asshole is like the center of what my life is about.
Okay.
Like I think about that all the time. It's
All
so
right.
funny that we go through life and it's like the object of life, at least for me and maybe some other people like you, what you're talking about
Yeah.
is how do I not be an asshole today? It's
You
so-
know, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
But and candidly, I mean, I could find you a quick half dozen people who disagree with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. But I know thousands of people.
It's
And then
really
there are
hard to
thousands
not
more
be
people who have-
judgmental.
Yeah. Yeah.
being judgmental,
But those stick with you. The people that you know that you have been an asshole. It's like, that bothers me. It's I don't like it. I mean, the handful of people who I've not been patient with or not,
Yeah.
or just, whatever, met in the wrong context, or I mean, and I'm going to assume I'm going to take it on myself for me to manage a situation. If you're not in a good headspace and you've got to deal with somebody, it's on you to, I think, as a karmically responsible person, it's on you to sort of figure out how to manage your own shit, basically.
Yeah.
And so I know when I failed to do that, and
Yeah.
it weighs on me,
They
I mean, I don't lose sleep at this point in my life. 10 years ago, I did. Well, 10 years ago, I was a bigger asshole.
well,
5 years ago, I lost sleep over it, and now I'm dealing with it by talking about it on the podcast.
Yeah, well, I think of various people that I know and different levels of success, and I think of certain individuals that I have worked with, and I think, wow, that person would really have it made if they just weren't an asshole. Like, that's the one thing.
Okay.
They've got everything, and if he wasn't an asshole half the time, he would be on top of the world.
Okay, I'll have to pick your brain off there.
You know what I mean? And
for a
then
couple of
conversely, real quick, I just want to say that you brought up, well, I brought up Kevin Smith, but you mentioned it as well.
Yeah.
When I went to see Kevin Smith this recent New Year's, doing a New Year's show, the one thing that really stuck out to me when I sat there and watched that, I could throw away all the content, all of the comedy, all of the entertainment, and I thought, this is a good dude sitting in front of an audience
right.
and sharing with people, and everybody that had the courage to speak up and talk to him from the audience, he was really caring and gentle with them.
That's awesome.
And it was like, that's what it's about right there. Like,
Nice.
He's able to not be an asshole.
I think that's why he's so. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
his work is why you know him. If you know him, and
Yeah.
and if you like it, and if you resonate with his particular vibes, plural, because he's got he has a lot of different faces. People
Yeah.
paint him with too broad of a brush if they want to be negative, I think, but I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
Well, and look, it's weird because I mean I normally have I have an outline. I sent you an outline, although some of it's why China, Carl. You had some questions that we want to be sure to maybe be able to deal with, and I want to talk about what's it like. Let's talk about, there's a core theme. I don't know if you identify with this at the moment, but there's a core theme of a lot of your work that's it's all about identity, really. To me.
Interesting.
And I mean, the earlier stuff, now I would say it's, fitting in as a misfit. It's a theme of work
Sure.
of outer space. I want to be as candid and deep as we. It's
Do it.
It's a crazy, bright, beautiful, sunny day.
It is.
This would be like a
There's
late
beautiful
night.
trees outside.
This
The
would be like
green.
a late night, gin-soaked kind of conversation where we're like got tissues. But given that we're not at all in the right environment for such a deeply thoughtful, introspective late night conversation, what has been your struggle and how have you dealt with it?
Oh boy. Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up identity for sure. And I was really close to believing that I had multiple personality problems or some form of it around the time that I moved out to LA.
Right.
And I had divided my personality into very strict compartments of Sir Millard Mulch and Carl King. And then I added Dr. Zoltan. And I was very confused about those worlds and who am I right now when I'm here?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And I don't know why that was so terrifying to me, but it really was a major problem in my life. I was terrified of owning the fact that I was a weirdo creative person.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've just been working on trying to repair myself over the years. And that can take the form of reading all of these self-improvement books, going to therapy. Am I going off track here?
No, I'm listening.
Yeah.
The look on my face is
No. It has nothing to do with you. I just feel like my brain started blanking and wandering. So try to wrangle me back on.
I don't think you're going off track, but let me try to be a host and help you along.
Yeah.
So for me, again, you have this, like, way back in the day, your first, musician and graphic design, but it was a job, but it's a high skill that you developed. You took all these things, you made a market in music, you're continuing to do music, and you're coming back and forth with music now, which I'm glad, after you had a period where you weren't doing music, because I know you had the issue where basically music hurts your ear, like you couldn't deal with music.
Yeah. Shortly after meeting you, I was in a car accident.
I remember.
On the 405.
Not at all suspicious with black SUVs, and you're talking about super controversial things and conspiracy theories, and then
very strange at the time.
And then Q, as if George Norrie was listening, or broadcasting you on AM coast to coast. You were in a crazy accident with some black SUVs.
Yeah, some black SUVs hit us, and we got stuck in the car, and more cars were hitting us in the dark on a curve in the rain. And I was desperately calling all of my friends saying, please call 911 for us, because we can't get through to 911. We're stuck. And I thought I was going to die. And I developed this crazy, like, for days, I was in this, what do you call it? Shock.
Yeah.
Where any sound or vibration would create a flashback, and I would smell the car accidents and all this stuff. Anyway, the short story is this went on for 5 or 6 years, to the point of I couldn't handle hearing any sound because it would trigger panic attacks, constant panic attacks. And finally went on medication for it and went to therapy, and now I'm doing okay. And at some point after 10 years of that, I finally was able to be like, you know what? I'm going to try to make some music again and see if I can do it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, and as are all these people you developed, it seems to me, a whole new fan base, or additional people discovering what you've been doing.
Yeah.
It's been, the whole theme of this Big Fish idea.
You know what? Can I stop there? Real quick.
Sure.
It's interesting because, sorry to talk about myself so much, blah, blah, blah.
You're the guest, Carl.
Right.
It's okay.
But
Carl also hosts podcasts, so I think he's self-conscious about talking too much, whereas I'm talking too much and you're the guest. So
yeah. So coming back to identity and what that did to me, that car accident, and not being able to be around music or make music, made me have to live life as a non-musician, and
that was so weird.
It took away that thing
exactly that
I was excelling at and doing well with, and I wanted to come out here and take advantage of that. And suddenly I'm in a car accident and can't do music anymore. So I had to reinvent myself and figure out who I was without music.
This is where I wanted to go anyway.
Yeah.
Please continue on this thread. So what did you jump to where it started to come together for you conceptually and whatnot? I mean, you were doing video, started doing video production, and became very skilled at it. Those of us, I mean, Carl and I are both like really technical guys. I would say you're probably way more technical than I am at this point, but we both come from like technical backgrounds with music. And, I have a film degree and went to school, and Carl knows, we both, like, knows electronic music and programming, and these are all sort of sympathetic skills. If you really master, say, recording software, you're going to be able to learn video editing software. It's conceptual. The leap is not that big.
That's why getting into the film scoring thing was suddenly like, oh, this is just video editing with music.
Yeah.
Kind of like, oh, I get that. Now I can do it.
There you go. Once you know what it is and how to approach it. Once you know what it is, then you know how to approach it.
Yeah.
So journey. When I was starting to say, and then you got to it. Let's get into this. the journey from Venice to here was one kind of a giant journey. And you've talked about this in your own work a lot. In terms, or like interviews and such, in terms of from rebuilding yourself, Carl version like 3.0 or whatever
So
it might
funny.
be. Are we okay?
Oh yeah, we're good.
Yeah,
No.
and I'll talk more about the logistics in a minute, but building the new beast here, building the new king,
Yeah.
and integrating your personalities and just being Carl King, and your website, Carl Kingdom, which is great. You're so lucky that you could have carlkingdom.com. It's going to be linked, but we're nowhere near the end. I'm just saying, that's such a great idea that your kingdom, you can wrap all of you can go
Yes.
be in a nugget of one
Right.
place.
Yep. That
It's
was
so great. So you got the deal. You already, I know, dealing with some video stuff, but and you'd had a project you worked on a long time, a video project of yours, previous, but you got the book deal with Michael Weese. Talk about that a minute, because it's still a great book. I reread it like a year ago. It's still I skimmed it for the relevant parts that I was trying to bone up on. It was still a really useful book.
Yeah. So you're a creative genius. Now what was the title?
Yeah.
And
It still is the title, probably.
yes, it's funny because there's a little bit of a funny, ironic backstory to this. And it's that I had a client over at my studio, in my home studio, and we were recording some voiceovers for something, and he was a filmmaker. And I had a copy of Save the Cat. And at the time, I had written this thing called like 100 creative career mantras, something like that.
Right. I remember
And I
that.
had just sent it around to some friends and some people because I had sat there, and whenever I had a thought of like, oh, this is what I need to remember, they were all for myself.
Sure.
Like one sentence things. And I ended up with like 100 of them. I was like, this could be a cool little book or something. And I remember at the time I read Save the Cat, and this guy was over at my house, and I said, I wrote this little thing. I've been reading this Save the Cat book. I don't know anything about filmmaking, but it seems like an interesting publisher. That's interesting, this whole concept. I wonder if I could send my book idea to them, and maybe they'd like to print it, like this innocent, dumb statement.
Sure.
And the guy is like, oh, that's never going to happen because you don't have an agent, and you may as well just give up.
I wasn't the one telling you.
No, it wasn't you.
I would have.
No.
I would have been like,
No.
go for it.
Yeah, no, this guy was just like, not going to happen. Yeah, he was like, yeah, I know people who my wife works in publishing and is an agent or something, and there's absolutely no way anyone is ever going to read it. Or
And 97.3% of the time, that's probably accurate.
maybe
It's
so. Yeah,
probably the truth.
but it's so funny that I decided, well, fuck you.
yeah,
Beep. Sorry about
that's
the
okay.
cussing.
No, we let it fly here. I just put the E on there.
And I went and I emailed the PDF to them, and within like a day, they were like, one of the
You heard from the vice president, right?
The vice president
You heard
wrote back and was like, yeah, maybe this is better as a blog or something. And then the president wrote back and was like, actually, we like this, and we'd like to develop this. And
That's
why
awesome.
don't you write a book? I'm like, okay. So boom, book deal, and wrote
Yeah.
a book, sent it in, they published it. They ended up naming it and coming up with the title and the cover art,
Right.
which I didn't have much to do with, but I went along with it.
I
Like,
love
okay,
that.
cool,
I
it
love
works.
both of them still.
But they printed it almost verbatim. Like they changed almost nothing. They took my draft and they printed it and put it in bookstores.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And it's still, I haven't been to a bookstore recently. I'm sure it's still in their catalog. I saw it when I was on their website last week.
and I'm not saying that to like, look how easy life is for me or something. I'm saying like, I could have taken that guy's advice and never emailed that one PDF
Yep.
in one email that took me 30 seconds to do.
There you go. You'd already done the work. It was just a matter of sharing it with the right person, taking the leap
and I
of
happened
faith
to hit the right
to
place.
send it
and
out.
One thing, one shot, there it was. And that can happen for people if you just do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that, and I love that was another one of these kind of chips on your own credibility stack. You'd established a certain amount of credibility, obviously, in music. Then with Michael Weese Productions, this is one of the preeminent film and TV and publishers.
Mm-hmm.
They do some of the classic books. I had a couple of my books that were textbooks in college when I went to film school in the early 90s that were some of his earlier books he published. So I was super impressed. I'm like, wow, a friend of mine wrote a book for my, this is awesome. I tried to coattail right on that as much as I could. but I mean, no, you were nice enough. There was a screening for that ayahuasca film that Michael did that we went to, and he was really gracious, and we're since connected on Facebook, which is,
I think the thing that ended up going wrong with that book was that it was a little bit of a difficult sell, and it wasn't a really specific thing. I think that when people look at that cover and the title, they're not quite sure what's going on. And when you look at a lot of the Michael Wiese titles, aside, Save the Cat has a subtitle of The Last Screenwriting Book You'll Ever Need.
Right.
You look at most of their big titles, and it's really clear what the book is and how it's going to help you.
Sure.
And my book was like, what's going on with the duck in a light bulb, and I don't know what's happening here.
Well, and it's all about how to it's a lot of nuts and bolts and practical tips about how to manage a life as a creative.
Yes.
And really practical stuff.
A lot of people seem to get something out of it. I still hear from people who say I'm buying more copies for my friends and sending it.
Absolutely. Advice about how to manage finances when you're a freelancer and things like, so much good practical stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to link all of it. You're going to have the biggest blog post. We're going to link everything. Mostly I'm going to say, actually, carlkingdom.com will be the main thing because it's all there when we get to that point. But you've been doing so much video production, creation. We couldn't even, if we were just trying to catalog your output, I don't even think we could do it in a half-day show because it's honestly so prodigious. But talk about what you've been doing most lately, because I really want to pay some time to your animated endeavors and your brand new show that has come out.
Oracle of Outer Space is a sci-fi fantasy animated TV pilot concept that I independently funded through Kickstarter and Indiegogo. It stars Dweezil Zappa, John Schnepp, a friend of mine who passed away recently, and I wanted to say a few things about that after this, so let me get back to that. But Joni Brosis, who's a cosplayer, Leanna Vamp, who am I forgetting?
You got Travis Orban.
Blanking out. Travis Orban does a little cameo.
Is Mike Keneally
Mike Keneally does a main voice. Girl named Ebony Amber, who did some great work.
Mr. Home Movies himself.
Mr. Home Movies. You talking about Brendan Small?
No, I'm talking about
Home Movies. He did Home Movies.
Oh, I'm talking about, I didn't mean Brendan Small. I meant American Movie.
Well, no, he's not in this. He was.
Oh, I'm crossing. Sorry, I'm crossing streams with your Grand Architects of the Universe.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me shut up and let you continue.
No, that's fine. So yes, the thing that I got into was writing an animated show, and I really flopped on that in this process in writing this thing and creating it. It was The episode 0 hasn't come out yet, but it was a massive, to frame it positively, a learning experience.
Okay,
a hard learning.
Was it a lesson in what not to? It was a lesson how not to produce an animated pilot.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And
what are a couple of? You don't go into details just because we're going somewhere else, but just tick off a couple things that are major learning issues without drilling
everything.
Down.
But first of all, the writing. If you don't have the writing together and you don't have a clear story and you're not making sense, people are gone.
Yeah.
The viewer is absent. They check out. And I'm a huge fan of insane Adult Swim stuff. Eric Andre, deconstructionalist, insanity, Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, Metalocalypse, whatever. I always loved that chaotic insanity.
Right.
Which I had on the How to Sell album. However, when you translate that into a visual medium, into a story, when you don't have that backbone of the story and clear communication of what's going on, holding it together, and you just decide, hey, I like all that chaotic stuff. Let's make it insane the whole time. Gone.
Tough sell.
Gone.
Yeah.
Tough sell. So when I screened it at LA Comic-Con, I just watched as the room of, 50 people or whatever, just blankly staring at the screen like, what am I looking at?
Wow.
And that's like the center of my whole thing now. Just like, what am I looking at? John Schnepp passed away.
Yeah, please talk about John Schnepp and give a little context. I had met him a few times. We have a lot of common friends.
How much time do we have real quick?
We probably got about 15 minutes.
Okay, good. That's plenty of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I only need 2 or 3 to wrap up the thing I want to say at the end.
John Schnepp was a friend of mine that I tried to make friends in animation, and he was one of the only people that reciprocated and would hang out with me and meet up and get some food.
And he was, among other things, and he got a lot of credits, but he was a director on Metalocalypse.
Yeah, he was
cult classic. Speaking of Brendan Small, created Metalocalypse. Great classic fan favorite show.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed his darker, chaotic side of comedy and the weird, inaccessible stuff he made on the side.
Yeah,
I really appreciated that stuff because that's where I come from.
You seem like spiritually related somehow, like creatively, spiritually in the same stream, you know.
And I was always kind of being like, "Hey, I'm like that too," but it never quite registered for him. I don't think because I wasn't an outgoing explosion of creativity like that guy was all the time. You just you'd go pick him up and go to get food, and within the couple of hours, you would have heard, 20 amazing, strange ideas pop out of his head. Just like, what? Where would you ever come up with that?
Yeah.
However, him passing away suddenly was. I went to this LA Comic-Con thing, and I was trying to show off my Oracle of Outer Space that he was in, and he had passed away not too long before that. And there was a little memorial thing at LA Comic-Con that there's like 12 people at, which really made me angry on like a deep level. I was sitting there like, where are all of these, if I may cuss again, these fucking frauds that hung around him all the time kissing his ass?
Right.
Where are they?
He was a centerpiece of that world.
Yeah, and he was huge at LA Comic-Con.
And he was a presence. He had like the crazy curly hair.
Yeah,
he's hard to miss and huge personality and all this.
He would be one of the faces on Mount Rushmore of the Comic-Con world, Right. And I remember being deeply angry sitting there watching and just seeing his fiancée Holly and his friend Tony Blacha. They couldn't even talk up there. They're just crying, just bawling about losing John. And I was just really angry. And I went back and I sat at my booth by myself that day. And I just thought, this is all it's worth in the end of someone's life after they do so much work and have so many people around them that are clinging to them and worshiping them and wanting to get backstage and take a photo with them. And in the end, there's a tiny footnote at Comic-Con with 12 people there and some of his friends just crying. And I just thought, this has to change. And I thought, here I am marketing this thing, and there's all these people walking by looking at my poster and just like, it's not registering. And I had done a screening and it didn't register. And then you go to and then John didn't register. And it's like, this whole pattern with my life of not registering with people and not connecting with an audience and not getting my ideas across has to stop right now. I just had one of those moments where it's just like, I don't know what it's called.
Right.
Revelation.
An epiphany.
My old life is done. My new life starts right now.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is.
Well, and what did that epiphany lead you to?
That I'm done making weird shit that entertains myself, and nobody else knows what the hell I'm talking about,
other than the cult.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
which man, just to pay the bills. But you're doing this, as I've said when people talk about entertainment, it's like it's hard to make a bad movie. It's like, so when you actually see something that's halfway good, I mean, just understand the level of. There's all the crazy hard work that the bad filmmakers did trying their best. Plus there's the luck. Plus there's, maybe better taste or whatever. But it's so damn hard to do anything.
Yeah.
That what you said, it resonates with me. It's part of why I'm going to make my transition. I don't want to shift it to me yet, but that's leading to where I'm going. Well, I guess this is the time to do it unless I'm interrupting. I mean, I want to talk about.
Well, I just want to say that
what this led you to.
I want to make things for other people and have a healthy connection with an audience.
Exactly.
And have everybody be happy and me be happy instead of just entertaining myself. So I'm no longer here to me.
Well, with this podcast, that's why I'm transitioning Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom. I was telling Carl here off mic before we started that, I mean, I have How China Works with Ying Li, and I love that show. The response to that has been like really flattering. I feel like we, but between planning and that bit of good luck that we were talking about that you've got to have, we've planned / stumbled into like a thing that works. It's like a thing that people are resonating with, and but it's a certain audience, who cares about China related stuff. But I don't need 2 China shows.
Yeah,
and because that show will be way bigger than Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom ever could be, because of the nature of it, because it's not just it's trying to deal with international relations and shift like the future of the world. It's dealing with these big weighty issues, and so academic and business people can connect with it. But with Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, it was about finding commonality in people that have this aspect, some connection to China, from China, related to whatever. But so this new show that I'm going to do, I'm transitioning this into this new concept called If I Knew You Better with Brendan Davis, because we got to have a little self-promo in there. So the idea is that it's conversations with people who've had some kind of an amazing journey, and we're going to talk, we'll cover the basics. We'll cover the basic bio stuff and we'll get that in there for the sake of reference and as a starting point. But the conversations I want to have with people, probably need to do more late night. The conversations with people will be talking about the kind of things that you talk about with people you respect if you know them really well.
Yeah.
Right. So the pretense will be, here's what I would ask you if I knew you better.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
But we'll get into it. You like that?
Yeah.
Well, I need you to write me some new theme music, so we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about. I've already. Ronald Paredes has got my new logo. We're about to unveil. Wow. He's working hard on that. He's done all my graphics stuff since you retired from being available as a go-to graphics guy. My friend Ronald does all my graphics work, and
it looks good.
Thank you. And from you, I love his work. I'm such a fan. So that's what I'm doing with the new show, because I want to reach a new audience. And I'm going to have you back on that show once we've gotten that to the next stage. And especially you have helped me in so many ways. And I appreciate the nice things you said about me earlier. And I don't want to embarrass you here, but if I'm ever going to do it, I'm going to do it right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, your friendship has meant so much to me in ways that, like, the things you said about me, I have my version of all that I could say to you. Bottom line is, getting to know you, seeing the word prodigious is it's like the word awesome has lost some of its power because it's overused. Prodigious isn't as frequently used, although I mean it in the full context of this. You have a prodigious amount of talent and output. And it was always my hope, even when I was still kind of a knucklehead trying to find my way around. I was just maybe a knucklehead with like a half a step ahead of you in certain things because I was already here, but I wasn't like light years ahead of where you were. But maybe that's what helped inspire you a little bit, because you saw, if this guy could do something, right, maybe I could have a career.
But you know what? Both of us are the kind of people that will, if we say, how do we do something? Well, we listen to every podcast, we watch every video, read every book, take every class, and we do it.
This is true. This is true.
It's not I don't ever feel, maybe I have a talent for doing that, of studying and learning.
Well, but, you put in the work, you know. You put
it's in just a linear process. You do step by step, and then you execute the project.
Absolutely. And
that's my atheistic view on things.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, you've been through quite a series of incarnations, and I'm really glad that we met when we did, and have just been able to, I mean, I live in another country, so to say that I don't see very often is just a reality that I don't see anybody from here because I don't live here. But, given the nature of your work and your life, and you're, happily married and raising a bunch of like fur and feather and scale babies. You've got the menagerie at the King household. So you have a very full and busy life and run all your projects. So, and you're not about idle chit chat anyway. I mean, I
am though.
Well, here we are.
I'm letting everyone out there know I'm into idle chatting. So chat me up.
Is that happening now?
It's true.
Is this Carl 2019?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't get this memo.
Yeah.
But
It's true.
Okay.
Just ruined the whole show. Sorry.
Damn, sorry, you wrapped up, but killed my finale. No, it's
Yeah.
okay. So listen, before I let you go, because who knows where I was going with that. Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom. Do we make a cameo in the pilot?
Oh, you do?
Where am I in the pilot? Apparently, the logo or
Do you want to know specifically, or do you really want to know?
Well,
I mean, because you'll see it
when will I see it?
next month. Next month, the Oracle of Outer Space is coming out.
Okay, will I be pleasantly surprised?
Yeah, well, it's you have a poster on the wall
Oh, great!
where the radio hosts work.
I'm very excited
They must
about
be
that.
fans of your show because they have a poster up.
I'm very excited about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that was the Kickstarter reward that I must have.
Yeah.
And at the time I didn't really have. It was reasonable, but I didn't have the spare money. But I'm like, I'm going to make this happen.
I think
did
they're
pay.
only. I think according to
I
the
did pay
show,
you.
if you didn't know any better, they're only fans of Mr. Bungle and Brendan Davis. So I don't know if there's any other references. in there.
There's no one else.
Yeah.
There's no one else. Okay, awesome. What do you? My ride is running late, so I can take a few
nice.
more moments to
Nice.
finish, so we don't have to cut it.
That's cool.
Prematurely short. What would you hope for career-wise? Like when you think, say, 5 years down the road, like you mentioned, hey, best case, I make the show, it goes to a network, and I could do it at a. What would be like the Carl 5 years from now best case scenario? Maybe a version of it, understanding that of course it will never be exactly that.
Well, based on my own temperament, I really enjoy running things myself and working independently. So ideally, I would love it if just a bunch of people all did a Patreon or something and just paid me to make a show.
Right,
which
right.
Is fat chance, buddy. But I would also love the experience of going through and being a writer and a showrunner and all of that. I totally love the idea of putting together a team eventually, doing all this animation, sitting in a writer's room, coming up with 5-season arcs, 10-season arcs.
Awesome.
I love it. And maybe in a year I will say I don't love it, and maybe I'll be making another album. But
Are you working on a musical project right now?
I'm not doing any
'Cause
music
you're-
at this time right now. I'm completely in writing and creation mode. Get it out there.
Do you think I might be able to do a guest voice?
I don't know what's going to happen there. This has nothing to do with you, but it was definitely.
Yeah, I'm not trying to actually
No.
corner you. I'm just sincerely curious. 'cause
Yeah, it was a.
I work cheap,
Right.
obviously.
It was a technical hassle to try to do that with the Kickstarter and bring in like 5 or 6 people from around the country, and I had to mail around a Zoom recorder and get it, send it out. Get it back.
One of your awards was to be a guest voice.
And it's like, here's a microphone and a Zoom recorder. Here are the instructions. Talk into it and like get that back and be like, oh boy, what do I do with this? And like it ended up turning out okay, but it was a cluster. You know what?
Were you able to use people as like call-in guests?
They
for
were
the
call-in
show,
guests, yeah.
So you
They
could
were-
filter it and kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
If somebody maybe was awkward because they weren't familiar with how to do it, it kind of played in the
It
vernacular
played into
of.
it. Yeah, it worked. And there was no problem there in the end. But technically, getting voice actors is a challenge. And if someone is a famous guitarist on tour, it's not so easy to get together with them and record a voice. when you
Hashtag
need them.
Weasel Zappa.
Yeah. Or they live somewhere else, or they're doing it because everybody in this thing is scattered all over the country.
Right. Well, I can make it work because I have the
Right,
technology,
yeah.
but that's not a plug for me so much as I'm excited
Yeah.
to see and do it, besides wanting to be in your show. I've said that 3 times now.
Yeah.
So the other important, I must know, do you think you might have the bandwidth to help with new music? And if not, again, it's not trying to corner
It's always
you.
it's open.
It's always a
Who
possibility.
knows?
All
Who
right.
knows?
We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something I have not done also, which is I'm going to conclude with the guest here. But before I do that, is there anything, there was so much we want to talk about. Is there anything we did not get to while Carl's checking his notes? I'll mention, this is exciting. Carl brought over his portable recording rig, which just the process of this, I think you've convinced me that this is how I'm going to do it, which is your portable Zoom recorder and 2 handheld mics with long cables. So we're sitting casually on opposite couches and chairs, and versus the more rigid, hunkered down across a common microphone, which has been my normal style. I
we're
really
on
like
comfy
this.
chairs and couches and kicking back.
This
and
is great.
Got pillows. And,
This is awesome.
yeah.
I'm going to totally do this. This is my new thing.
Yeah.
But is there anything on that list O thought-provoking questions?
Man, I don't know. I feel like you really hit it with the let's try to not be assholes thing. That's just so central. Sorry to bring that up again, but
No, that's okay. It's probably very useful for me to be reminded of.
that's the video game I'm in. I'm like,
Okay.
let's watch Carl as he tries to not be an asshole.
Well, and I'll say you became something you wrote went super viral and actually got copied and ripped off and reposted. But you wrote the 10 Myths About Introverts.
Yes.
Carl King wrote that, folks. It became a huge viral thing several years ago. He wrote that, and then he was reposted and credited many times, but then also people felt the need to copy and paste that and rip it off and claim it as their own. But Carl King wrote that, and it's pretty classic. Is that on your website?
It is on my website, and that's the most popular thing I've ever written, and I never intended for anybody to ever care about it.
And
It
that
was
bought
just
your
one-
beach house in Malibu.
It bought 10 beach houses. It's great.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to say live on the mic, your music is fading up right now.
Oh, here it is.
Thank you,
With Mike Stone
Carl
on drums.
King. Mike
There he
Stone
is.
on drums. There he is again. Hi, Mike Stone. Now playing in Funk Band Atomic Groove, as I understand.
There you go.
And
That's
he's
true.
having a blast. I see
He's
him
really
rocking it out.
He's doing really good with that.
I'm excited to hopefully I'll get to actually meet him on this trip. Carl, really appreciate you, man. It's been awesome to be your friend. It's been awesome to have you as the last Big Fish in the Little Kingdom guest. And your music, I got to tell you, man, to a person, people who maybe don't even like me, anybody who's heard this, any comment I've ever had about the music, people love this music.
Oh, well, very
you
good.
nailed
Thank
it.
you. Thank you very
man.
much.
Awesome. All right, guys, folks, friends, I look forward to seeing you again. I am going to be taking a hiatus with this podcast is now going to become If I Knew You Better. I haven't picked an exact launch date. This new show will kick off sometime later in February. I haven't got an exact date because I've got some travel and some work things to sort out and sync it all up. But thank you very much for listening. I hope you continue to listen to Big Fish. The shows are not going away. The blog's there. You can check it all out and enjoy it in perpetuity. But for now, thanks again. I'm Brendan Davis, and I'll see y'all on How China Works next week. And otherwise, I'll see you on what was this show in about a month.